I tell people like the pain points that people that have a BoFu gap deal with are like, they look on the blog, they have a ton of top of funnel content, no bottom of funnel. They see traffic going up, but they don't see conversions in correlation to that traffic going up. And I tell people, and it took me 7 or 8 months of consulting to really nail this, but bottom of funnel is a mixture between content and product. And a lot of times the content and the product team don't talk to one another. The communication is like very siloed and less cross-functional.
You're listening to Content Logistics,
a podcast for B2B marketers where we explore the foundational
and sometimes frustrating elements of content.
We're talking to the experts, learning all their tips and tricks, and sharing them with you.
We don't gatekeep here. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Content Logistics. I am your host, Dallion, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Baylee. Today, we have an amazing guest. Lashay Lewis is joining us on the show. She is a bottom of funnel marketing expert. I cannot wait for you to learn more about her story. That's how we kick off the episode. And she's sharing so many amazing, actionable tips that she's picked up along the way. And we can't wait for you to listen.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to transform your blog into a conversion machine. She is so good at making bottom of funnel content, specifically blog content, so different than product pages. And she has so many great ideas on how companies can do this with really small, scrappy teams with limited resources. And she herself provides so many free, helpful resources that really help to create this. So let's go ahead and get into it. Hey, Lashay, welcome to Content Logistics. We're so excited to have you here on our show today. Just to get started, Lashay, for listeners who might not be quite as familiar with your work, can you just give us a bit of your background and how you got started in content, specifically bottom of funnel or BoFu content?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm super excited. So this started way back in the day, and I said that like I'm like 60 years old, but this started like 15 years ago. When I was 15, I started building like these small affiliate Amazon websites. And the purpose was just to be able to I love the idea of that I was able to think about something and then make it a concrete thing. And then this concrete thing would actually drive human activity, like the psychology behind that I was obsessed with it. So I was building like these small kind of micro Amazon sites. For anybody that did affiliate marketing back in the day, you know that Amazon pays like 3% commissions. Nobody's living off that. But I would build these websites and like people would buy things from me. And I'm like, oh God, this is so cool. That's when I first got introduced to bottom of funnel. Didn't necessarily have a name for it, but I'm like, okay, when I write this style content, like people actually buy things. One of the cool things about Amazon is like, if they come to your website and let's say they purchase like camping gear, whatever else they purchase in that same string, like you'll get commission for. So that was cool. I've seen TVs and all types of stuff. I'm like, okay, all right. So that really taught me like, honestly, a lot about positioning. I did not know at the time, but it was teaching me a lot about how to find a niche and then how to position yourself in that niche and then what content to write around. So maybe like, I want to say maybe like from 20 to 26, I was working across like different content marketing and SEO agencies, hated it to the point where when I went out on my own as a consultant, I formed my entire competitive positioning against agencies. Wow. Just because of I know how they're ran on the inside, and a lot of things that they do are like unethical. So like, for example, you'll have the founder sell you, but then once they land the account, they'll give it to a junior. And it's like, that's not good for the client or the employee, right? So it's like just little things like that that really bothered me when I was working at agencies. So I want to say maybe like really last year, I went out on my own, but from like 27 to like 30, I was started diving into B2B SaaS more. First of all, for the record, I hated software when I started. I was like, this is so boring. How does anybody do this? God help me. Because I started in e-com, right? So I was in e-commerce. I was like, okay, again, with the Amazon affiliate stuff, e-com background. I did a lot of local SEO too and things like that. So I'm like, okay, I could get with this. But then for some reason, I tend to be attracted to challenges. So I'm like, okay, let's do this B2B SaaS thing. But what's really interesting about that is something that paid me very small in one industry pays me tons in another. So I think that was a really cool reflection. I had heard through the grapevine, it's like, oh, well, you need to come over to SaaS because they got money. Like they're venture backed and they need to spend. And I'm like, okay, let's see. Come to find out SaaS was so much more nuanced than what I expected. But I always love a challenge. So it's been crazy. I left my last in-house job, hopefully. I left my last in-house job August the 4th of 2023. And yeah, I've been consulting B2B SaaS startups since then on their content strategy. Yeah, I know that's like the really long version, but I wanted to give you guys context on who I am.
Amazing.
This fact that you started at 15, I'm going to send this. I have a 17-year-old sister. I'm going to send her this episode. And I think
everybody tells me that.
Yeah.
They're like,
so cool.
They're like, oh God, at 15, I was like partying and doing all types of stuff. I'm like, no.
Seriously.
You were building
boring in
micro sites on Amazon.
Yeah, right. Like I was very much a nerd as I am today, just slightly more cooler. But no, like I spent a lot of my time just like dissecting this process and trying to break it down to its core elements. One part I didn't tell you is that I wanted to work for this content agency really, really bad. Like it was the best one. I had learned so much stuff from them and I didn't make the cut. And that hurt me so bad that I was like, I'm never going through this again. Like I need to dissect and understand why I didn't get this opportunity. Luckily, one of the founders like really took me under his wing and really trained me. But I was like, damn, it ain't good enough. I want to work for y'all. Right. But it was amazing. It was everything because it taught me so much of what I know now. But I think this just goes back to a point of like, every no is not like rejection. Sometimes it's just redirection. Right. So yeah, that's really how all of this got started. Yeah.
We could probably do a whole episode on that, like how rejection and no's really make you a better marketer and just a better person in general.
Oh, totally. And nobody wants to hear that in the moment. They're like, screw that. Like, I wanted this opportunity. But at the same time, it's like, I find that and then leading into your weaknesses. So we can probably like get into this at some point in the episode, but like leaning into my weaknesses has helped build my entire business. I have some strengths, but I have weaknesses too. And it's like creating systems and operationalizing those weaknesses has what's been the backbone of my business.
Let's definitely get to that more. That's a really interesting, but just coming to our topic for the episode today, we're talking about a topic and that can be puzzling for even the most seasoned marketers, bottom of funnel content. So before we get into the nitty gritty of that, can you define what bottom of funnel content is in the context of content marketing? And then in addition to that, how would you differentiate between bottom of funnel, middle of funnel, and top of funnel content?
That's a great question. So what bottom of funnel is in the context of content marketing, really, it's really just a stage of where the buyer is mentally, right? So bottom of funnel meaning that they're closer to a purchasing decision. What bottom of funnel means in relation to like middle of funnel and top of funnel, again, like middle of funnel is just more of like how to do job to be done. It's more jobs to be done related. And then top of funnel is just like, okay, what is this thing? Statistics on this topic. Very like some people would call it thought leadership. But yes, bottom of funnel is really just a way to represent where somebody is at their stage in the buyer's journey. People like to tussle with me about this quite a bit, but they're like, oh, the buyer's journey isn't linear. I'm like, I know the buyer's journey isn't linear. Like, I'm not right, but top, mid, and bottom of funnel is just a way to conceptualize where they are in their journey. That's really all it is. If you want to be honest, there is no real funnel. Like, the funnel is proverbial. It's not real.
The funnel
But
doesn't exist. What?
I'm like, oh God, people are willing to kill me over this. But I'm like, okay, the funnel isn't a real thing. Like, somebody could listen to a podcast and then go talk to their friend in a Slack group and then sign up for a demo, right? So it's like hard to track that. But again, bottom of funnel is just a way to visually conceptualize like where somebody is in their buyer's journey.
Do you feel like people, this is what I think. I think that people really know how to do top of funnel content and they get that going and they're like, we're good. And then they're like, wait, where's my lead? Where's my conversion? And I think a lot of people don't do bottom of funnel content. So I'm wondering like how you got into this niche essentially. And what do you think about that?
That's literally exactly how it goes, right? So I tell people like the pain points that people that have a BoFu gap deal with are like, they look on the blog, they have a ton of top of funnel content, no bottom of funnel. They see traffic going up, but they don't see conversions in correlation to that traffic going up. And I tell people, and it took me 7 or 8 months of consulting to really nail this, but bottom of funnel is a mixture between content and product. And a lot of times the content and the product team don't talk to one another. The communication is like very siloed and less cross-functional. So really what I do for teams is I come in and I bridge the gap between content and product. And that's where the BoFu magic is at. But again, like a lot of times BoFu is a result of the problem. It's not the problem. The problem is teams aren't communicating with one another. I see this with content and demand gen. These two teams don't communicate with one another, which blows my mind. But it's like the culture has just been very siloed communication where the product team only talks to the product team and the content team only talks to the content team. It's like you don't create great content that way. And it also like messes up the alignment because demand gen might see us in one category and content might think we're in another category, right? So it's like, and I think, again, this all goes back to the history of like building those affiliate websites and stuff like that. But it's like, I noticed there was a big gap in the market with bottom of funnel. It's like, even the companies that say they do it, they don't do it. And right is like subjective, right? Like anything could be right. But it's like, they don't dig deep enough into customer research when they're doing this. They're like, oh, okay, let me just find best X for Y and, Slack alternatives. And it's like, no, it's deeper than that. Like, you really got to understand who your customer is, what your product does more granularly. Like, okay, so what are the features? What are the capabilities? What are the benefits? How many ICPs are we targeting? That's another thing that companies do, right? They write their content in a vacuum when it's like, no, you probably have multiple ICPs if you are not a vertical SaaS. You probably have multiple ICPs. Those different ICPs will use your product in different ways and different use cases. It's like, you really got to like break that stuff out. And that's what I find that companies weren't doing that. More importantly, the agencies that they were working with weren't going to that extent because their main focus is like scale. They don't have time to dig into it that much. But yeah, that's usually what I was finding when I was talking to these people. I'm like, okay, there's a gap somewhere in here. And again, it took me like 7 or 8 months to figure out the gap was between content and product. The only way I figured it out, one of my clients described me as a product marketer with a content bend. And then, mind you, I've never done product marketing, but her saying that was like light bulb moment for me. I'm like, oh, okay, that's the gap that I fill. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about this previously, Lashay, that we had Tass Bober on our show a while back. So you guys do similar but different things where she's more focused on those product landing pages and you kind of blend those two together and do the content. You need to have that product background as well, but I just love the distinction between those two.
No, totally. And I think it's funny you mentioned her because we just literally got off a sales call together. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, so our processes overlap quite a bit where it's like she needs the same thing I need. She needs it like a little less in depth than I need it because landing pages are more short form where the content I write blogs are more long form. But whatever she does on the landing page side will inform what happens on the website. So I'm getting intel from her, she's getting intel from me, and we kind of swap that back and forth and be able to create alignment across organic and paid channels.
That is really cool. Can you elaborate on how you help people bridge that gap between product and marketing? I think I'm just going to make a statement. This is hard. That when you were talking about this, I was like, this is hard work. And I think that's why people don't do it. And I just, how do we make it a little easier? How do we make it a little more fun? How do you help people do this? Because it's important.
That's a great call out. Like, it is hard. And that's why most, not just companies, but even agencies shy away from doing this because it's like, oh, it's too much work. Like, I just want, like, so my process of this is, first of all, we lay out a canvas, right? Shout out to the Fletch Bros because they inspired this canvas. They are two positioning experts, Anthony Pieri and Rob Kaminsky. So we lay out this canvas, and this canvas is meant to bring, it's really supposed to be almost like a product marketing canvas. But when I started using, I was like, hold up. I could use a lot of this stuff for what I do in content, specifically bottom of funnel, because bottom of funnel is more product driven. I'm like, okay, so we fill out this canvas, right? That has the persona, the marketing department, the current way, pain points, features, benefits, capabilities. Once we lay all of that out, it's like we get a better sense into, okay, what is our positioning? Who are we targeting? What are the different segments that we're targeting? And then I noticed that either this goes really good or really bad. It's like the teams are like, oh, no, I don't think we're that, we're this. And then, and it's crazy because when I would start working with companies, you'd be so surprised about how much collateral these teams have that they don't share with one another. So it's like getting them all down in one area where it's like, okay, y'all, we doing a workshop. This is what we need. We're going to lay this out. We're going to hook up with the product team, probably get somebody from sales so they can give us some pain points. And we just get together and just, again, that cross-functional communication and lay it all out. And then we'll get that canvas to a place where they're happy with it. And then everything else starts from there. So really, it's just about getting everything down, but having different individuals from different teams. Not too many cooks in the kitchen, but enough. Maybe like somebody from sales, maybe like head of product, somebody from the content team, right? That can give their input on this. And once we get that canvas to a place that feels good, that's when we're like, okay, now we can move forward with keyword research. Yeah.
I can imagine that is a long process, getting everyone on the same page to approve that framework.
But you're surprised, right? Like it's not that long.
Really?
Yeah. Like we can probably get it done with like a 90-minute workshop. Wow, and just get it done. Alternatively, a lot of team, again, and I find this over consulting, like a lot of teams, a lot of specifically content teams are very small. They're very stretched on resources, limited on bandwidth. So alternatively, what they can do is like give me their internal collateral, like so battle cards, feature benefit pairing information. And what I'll do is I'll take a stab at filling in the canvas and they can let me know like, okay, Lashay, we need to switch this or change that. But no, it actually, it doesn't take as long as you think it would. It's just like teams don't think to do this. So it's like when I bring it to the table, they're like, oh, okay, that's why we're not aligned, because we all haven't sat down together and talked about this and flushed it out.
Cross-functional collaboration has been a huge theme on this show. It's funny to me that it just keeps coming up. I mean, it comes up in every single episode, how important that piece is to content. And I just feel like it's so interesting because it's actually quite simple to get the right people in the room together to map all these things out, but just people forget or they're busy or they just didn't think about it. And I think that it's just cool that that's become a theme on this show, that cross-departmental collaboration and content creation have to go hand in hand for this to work well.
Yes, it's literally a non-negotiable. Like, you have to do this or we're not going to be able to get the outcome that they want, which is usually more inbound leads. And the funny thing is just like, again, these teams don't realize this is an issue until somebody comes to them, some outside third-party person is like, okay, well, your problem is you're not talking to this team. And one of the things I hear from like content marketers a lot is like, it's hard for me to get a subject matter expert to do this information. Like, they're always busy. They're always doing that. But I find like this way of collecting information allows you to have to bother them less because you're getting everything down in one workshop. And then you take what you learn in this workshop and you build the strategy from that.
I really like this idea of this process because while it might be a bit of work initially, like you mentioned before, a lot of these teams are really small and they have to be scrappy. They have limited resources, but bringing all the teams together initially is going to save you so much time in the long run and allow you to produce more content at a higher pace and hopefully higher quality as well.
Totally. Quality is where it's at, especially with bottom of funnel. It's like people will be like, oh, well, how many posts do I have to do a month? Like, is it like 10, 20? I'm like, no. Like, the max I do, well, if I think about my engagements, like the minimum I would tell people to do is like 3 a month. 3 a month will get you so far if you focus less on quantity and more on quality. Because again, bottom of funnel, it's like somebody that's that far down the buyer's journey are very aware of their problem. They have an idea of a solution, which is why they landed on the article. Now it's up to you to position your product as the solution to their pain points. And when you're at that stage, like, you just have to get more granular. You have to get more specific. Like, okay, you're having this pain point. Here's our capability that directly solves this pain point, right? Like, that's quality. And I try to explain to people all the time. I'm like, okay, well, do I have to hit a certain SEO count? Or I'm using Yoast and I'm trying to hit all green on the thing. I'm like, no, like, that's not how this works. Like, the deeper you get with the content, like, Google will do its job. And I know people are like, oh, well, I don't know. No, like, Google will do its job. I've seen session duration as long as 8 minutes on bottom of funnel articles. Again, because the nature of the person searching for something like this, honestly, usually their knowledge is higher than somebody that would be searching top of funnel. Because again, they're like, okay, what is sales enablement versus best sales enablement software for enterprise companies, right? They're very aware of their use case. They know what their problem is. So it's like, now, if that reader comes to that blog and you're like, okay, what is sales enablement on a bottom of funnel article, they're bouncing like so quick. So it's like the knowledge level of the writer and the reader have to be here. And a lot of the time it's not equal to one another because people bring in random freelance writers and they're like, oh, okay, create me this content. No context on the product, no context on the use case, the ICPs. They're just like throwing them in shark-infested waters and saying, okay, figure it out, right? Like, that's not the way to do this. Yeah.
There's a lot of really good things to unpack there. I think there is so much outdated information out there and just these crazy ideas like, we need a specific keyword and like write the whole article on that keyword when the content just sucks then. Like, just write good content. And we have some people that say like, oh, we need to post on the same day every week. Like, no, we don't need to do that.
Yes, totally.
That one kills me. Yeah.
No, that has me thinking, and I'm trying to think when you said that, something just crossed my mind, and I think, okay, yes. So when you were like, oh, we choose one keyword and we have to write the entire article about it. Like, I tell people this all the time, like, your H2s, you do not have to stuff, and you should not stuff keywords in your H2s. When it comes to bottom of funnel, your H2 should be capability led, right? So key feature number 1 is whatever the capability is. That capability should directly solve a pain point that they're dealing with. Key feature 2, capability led. That capability should directly solve, right? So it's like making a lot of mental connections, because when the reader comes to the article, you want them to be like, oh, okay, they get it, right? I'm having this exact problem. And you know that's the exact problem they're having, because what did we do before? We did cross-functional communication. So maybe we learned from the sales team the exact pain points that prospects are coming in with, right? So it's like none of this is guessing, like it's real customer research that's baked into these pieces. Yeah.
I think I want to talk through your next steps. So you build out this canvas with you bring in sales, you bring in marketing, you have this great conversation. What are you doing next to build this content?
So after we lay out the canvas, the thing I'll do after that is keyword research. So again, a lot of people think that keyword research is just, well, specifically for bottom of funnel, they're like, oh, best versus an alternative. Yes, but again, content is not written in a vacuum. So best what, right? Like best sales enablement software for who, for what, right? And the reason that's important too, because I find that companies like to feature dump. Companies usually feature dump because they're not aware of the specific use case, or they're not being cognizant about the use case that drove the search, because not all of your ICP is going to use all of your features. Like some of them want to use some more than others, right? So it's like understanding not just the search intent, but the use case that drove the search is very important. I do this like a multitude of different ways. So I either like to let the pain point drive the keyword research. So maybe somebody has a specific pain and they're looking up something, or a lot of the time, maybe the product has like a specific capability. Maybe that could drive the search. I'll share it with you guys after this, but I did a post on this. I called it the BoFu radar. And it's like 4 different ways you can do your bottom of funnel keyword research based on ICP, based on capability, based on the pain point. So it's a lot of different ways you can do that. But the customer research helps me understand, okay, what are our most high revenue keywords, right? High revenue meaning if they see this, they're looking to buy something and it's related directly to what we do and the ICP we serve. So after we lay out that canvas, I'll do keyword research, bottom of funnel. From there, I have these templates that the team, well, again, I was just telling her about this before you came, Baylee. I was telling her, I was like, the consultancy was done with you for the longest time, right? So I would take the templates and have the writers on the team fill them in. But again, I keep getting the thing where it's like, oh, bandwidth, and I don't have the time to learn this. And it's like, as much as I was helping them, I was hurting them, as tough as that is to admit. So now I've taken more of a done for you approach, but the essence of it is I have these templates, right? And the templates are based on the canvas that we did in customer research, right? So it's like, it has the pain point and it has the feature and it has the capability, and it literally just tells you where to put each thing at, almost like a paint by number system for writers. Wow. Yeah. And I find that helps the learning curve quite a bit with because there's a huge learning curve with bottom of funnel. Like you guys said, it's like, isn't this hard? Like, yeah, it's hard, right? It took me a couple years of like really studying this thing to be able to figure it out and then break it down to its bare components. But this helps writers cut the learning curve by months or even years being able to fill in templates. Yeah.
Paint by numbers, bottom of funnel content, and like the psychology of bottom of funnel marketing. That's what I want to call this episode. This is so fascinating. I would love to see that template. But like you said, like,
no, totally, yeah. Doing
the work and you being in the work for years and years and years and honing this process has allowed you to templatize these things. Yes. But companies that like are just starting out doing content, I think that they, this just feels really big. It feels like a lot of work. It feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I see when I work with my clients, like I see why they just stick to top of funnel content. But, this is so important. And so I guess like continuing on with your process, what comes next?
So after the writers fill in the templates, what I like to do is help them with tracking. So typically a lot of my clients use and I say this on every podcast I'm on, like GA4 is so terrible, but a lot of them are using GA4. A lot of them use HubSpot. Some of them use like things like Lead Feeder and Amplitude and Dream Data and all these other things. But it's like, I like to plug that information into a Looker Studio template that I have, and I call it the BoFu report, and it gets very specific on which bottom of funnel pieces drove the traffic. Again, because if we don't know what's working, how do we know what to double down on? How do we know what to pull back on? Maybe a specific use case is driving more conversions than another use case. You want to lean this way. So it's like the last piece of this is being able to help them put this all together with tracking. Again, it's something that teams don't think about, mainly because they think about the bottom of funnel thing, but again, like you said, it's like super tough, and they're just like, oh, well, screw it. But it's like, it's easier to like track conversions from bottom of funnel than it is top of funnel, right? Because top of funnel, depending on your sales cycle, like that person might not convert 3, 6, 9 months, right? Especially if we're talking about enterprise products, they're probably not converting for a while. For you to think that you're going to track every single touch point from when they came in, downloaded the resource, whatever they did, to when they sign up, like that's just not realistic, right? But bottom of funnel is like one of those things that's so close to the conversion point. A lot of time I like to track with first touch or last touch attribution. And a lot of times people will come from the article and sign directly up for a demo from there, again, because they're already in the mental mind state of being ready to like make a purchase. So it's not hard to say, okay, this blog post drove 10 signups this month, or this one drove 5, right? And SEO and content marketing, all of that is a moat. So like content builds on one another. It might take a little bit of time to get the engine running, but it's like once it gets going, like it's going. So one article might get, 3 signups. And then you do 2 more articles the next month, they might both get 1. And then you do 5 the next month, they might get 10. And then you've got, it builds, it compounds on one another. If the company just sticks with it long enough, like, so for example, with one of my clients, they've got huge company, they sell to government agencies, multiple products, multiple segments within products, super, super complicated. They've been running the BoFu playbook for a year, and they were able to drive 95 leads within 1 month for one product, just from BoFu, right? So it's like, if you continue to publish, like it'll pay you dividends. You just have to like see it through. Yeah. And it's even more difficult because it's like, when I take the keywords to people and it's like, oh, this only gets 50 searches a month. It's like, is that really going to move the needle for us? Yes, it will. And then I always tell people, like, when you do keyword research, take that number with a grain of salt. I've written around keywords where Ahrefs or SEMrush says it gets 10 searches a month and have gotten 20 visitors a day. So you should always take that with a grain of salt. But I always tell people, focus on search intent over search volume.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think too, a lot of the companies we work with, well, first off, the sales cycle is really long. And second off, the value of a single customer is usually huge. Like it's going to pay for so much if you get it. So even if it's only 10 searches, again, taking that with a grain of salt might not be the most accurate number, like is a big amount of revenue.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Like, what's your deal size, or what's your ACV, or like all these other acronyms. It's like, once you figure out those numbers, like then the company can make a decision. Okay, do I need to invest in SEO because the value that I'm getting per deal just makes sense? You know what I mean? But I get I get the sentiment around SEO, again, because a lot of these companies get burned by agencies. And again, that's why I've built my entire consultancy around transparency. We work within Notion. The templates are visible. As my team is in like filling in stuff, they can see what's going on. And I think one of the coolest things about that is that it gives an operationalized process to the team. So like even after we're done our engagement, they can plug in new in-house writers, freelance writers, whoever they want to plug into the system to be able to continuously produce bottom of funnel. Because it's like the way I had to do this, like I had to build education into it because people are so not educated on how good bottom of funnel content should be written. I kind of had to like build education into that. So no, totally. I totally agree with you.
I think I want to come back to what you said earlier, Lashay, about how weaknesses become strengths. That I think could be really inspiring. But I want to know from you as an entrepreneur and just a really intelligent person who probably has taken a lot of risks to make this jump. Like what have you learned about yourself and like what gave you the courage to do that?
Well, one thing that you would have thought I knew this from trying to figure this out from 15 to 30, because that's literally how long it took. But being resilient is like so important, and like people just don't. I mean, they talk about it, but it's like people focus more on like the tactics and, oh, does this strategy work? It's like, no, like if you have that resilience built in you, you will figure it out. I'm one of those people that have gotten it wrong so many times that I had no choice but to get it right. And it only took for me to get it right one time. I've gotten it wrong from 15 to 29. Like when I got it right that one time, that was it. Right. So like even going back to me leaning on my weaknesses again, and I tell people this, they don't believe me, but I hate writing. Like I hate writing.
What?
I run a content strategy consultancy and I hate writing. It takes me too long. I'm not good at it, but I didn't let that stop me. I didn't say, damn, like, I'm not good at writing, so I can't run a consultancy. I said, no, let me build some frameworks around the thing that I'm terrible at, because this helps me. But come to find out, it helps a lot of other people too. So again, like leaning into those weaknesses. If I wasn't leaning into the weaknesses, I wouldn't have created the templates. Like those are to help me. So I don't take 2 years to write a blog post. You know what I mean? But it's like when you plug somebody that's like a bit quicker and has great copywriting chops, it's like a dream come true. So again, like leaning into your weaknesses. I'm not saying like build a whole consultancy around your weaknesses, but one of the things that my clients really, really want is execution. Like they want you to do the thing. Because again, teams bandwidth are just like ridiculous. Like they're asked to be doing more with less budget. It's like all over the place. So it's like, if I know I struggle with this thing, I'm going to build a system around it for it to be able to help me. Right. So again, just leaning into the weaknesses thing is so important. Yeah.
So good. I want to ask you while we wrap up, Lashay, if you could tell us what your biggest content marketing ick is. We ask all of our guests this question, and the answers are hilarious.
My biggest content marketing ick. There's so many. I think probably the funnel thing I was talking about earlier. Like, when people are like, the funnel isn't linear and there are no funnel stages. And I'm like, okay. Some people would argue like, oh man, I got to give 2 icks. Okay, this is the first one where it's like, okay, obviously we know the buying journey is not linear. And some people might argue with me and say, okay, well, top, mid, and bottom of funnel is an oversimplification of a very nuanced and complicated process. But like I tell people, I'm like, well, what does overcomplicating it do? Right? Like, seriously. So I'm like, I would rather oversimplify than overcomplicate. So and again, when you're selling, and let's talk from the consultancy standpoint for a moment, and I'm turning this whole ick into a rant. but that's how you know it's a real ick though, right? Like, so it's like when I'm being sold into these companies, you've got two people, right? You've got your champion and then you got your decision maker. When the champion is selling the decision maker and they're like, oh, we should bring Lashay on. They're like, well, why? Right? They can defer to so many different visuals I've put out, breaking down why you need to do this thing that Lashay just happens to be really good at. Now, the quicker you can get the decision maker to understand what it is that you're trying to do, the quicker they're going to give you a yes or a no. So again, like and I describe this to people as like becoming my champion's champion. Like I champion for the people that champion for me, right? So it's like the funnel thing, and I think the other ick is just like, people that think that search volume equals conversions tears me up on the inside. I'm like, God, like, why are we still on this? But no, like, when you start going after bottom of funnel, you have to literally flip your entire thinking. It's no longer about, oh, does this search get 20,000? Does this keyword get 20,000 searches a month? Or, it's not about volume, and it's not about volume in two different ways. It's not about volume in search, and it's not about volume in production. It's about quality and intent, right? So the quality of the content and the intent of the search. That's what it's about.
So
Those are
good.
really good.
So good. I'm blown away.
I
And
love
I'm
those.
got
Those are
so many ideas.
we've never gotten those icks before, so very unique, and those resonate with me a lot. So I think just as we're wrapping up Lashay, where can people find more information about you?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, right? Like almost every day. I'm just a chick that puts her thoughts on the internet and people just happen to want to follow me but I put out some pretty good stuff, right? I put out some visuals. I've got a free content marketing dashboard. The funny thing about the dashboard that I was telling you guys about is the second version is just an iterated version of the first. So I would plug clients into this dashboard and they would give me feedback like, okay, Lashay, this part is too long and this is too short. And I would take that and iterate on it and come out with a new version. So it's almost like, I think it's cool because in a lot of ways, a SaaS works the same way where you have that tight feedback loop of people telling you what they want. So I kind of run my consultancy as like a SaaS company a little bit. So yeah, like you guys can follow me on LinkedIn. Again, I have a free content marketing dashboard. It's the first link in the featured section. You guys, maybe you can put a link in the show notes. Yeah. I'll give you guys a link for that too. Yeah. And I put out some really cool content strategy visuals, and I give away a lot of like frameworks and interactive activities and all types of stuff, all BoFu centric.
Yeah, highly recommend following Lashay on LinkedIn. She has a great content. It's so fun. I love when you pop up on my feed.
Thank you. Love that.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining the show today. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We loved having you on the show.
Loved being here. Hopefully we can do this again soon. Maybe we'll bring Taz back next time.
Ooh. Can you imagine that episode? We need to make that happen.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Content Logistics.
If you enjoyed listening, you can follow Content Logistics wherever you get your favorite podcast.
Or access all episodes at marketersindemand.com. Bye.